Dear students, welcome to today's SST class. Today we are going to learn about the United Nations. The United Nations is a world organization that helps maintain peace and security in the world. It has at present 192 member nations. Its headquarters is situated in New York. India became a member of United Nations on October 30th, 1945. Now let's see the United Nations formation, how it is formed. At the end of the First World War, the leaders of the world set up an international body which is called League of Nations. Its aim is to maintain peace in the world. But it proved to be a weak body and could not do so much in the direction of keeping peace in the world. And we see the Second World War was fought from 1939 to 1945. And this war ended with the bombardment on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan in 1945. This was more terrible and caused huge destruction. The atom bombs killed 3,20,000 people and left several people homeless. Again, at the end of this war, the world leaders met and prepared a blueprint for the United Nations. And in June 1945, delegates from 51 nations met at San Francisco and drafted a charter for international peace. Thus, the United Nations organization was born. Now let's see the principles of the United Nations. What are the principles? The United Nations has the following principles which all member nations must agree to. They are: first, all members must respect each other's sovereignty and right. Second, disagreement will be settled through peaceful means. Third, threats and use of force will be avoided. And fourthly, the United Nations must receive support of all the members in all activities. Now, having seen the principles, let's see the objectives of the United Nations. The objectives of the United Nations are to maintain international peace and security, to develop friendly relations among nations, to cooperate in solving international economic, social, and cultural and humanitarian problems, to promote respect for human rights and freedom, and finally to act as a center for harmonizing the activities of various nations in attaining the objectives of the United Nations. The United Nations neither makes laws nor imposes taxes. It is a place where issues and problems are discussed and other solutions worked out. Any nation that accepts the goal of the United Nations Charter and committed to peace can become its member. The United Nations symbol is a map of the world surrounded by olive branches on a blue background. Now let's move on to see the bodies of the United Nations. The United Nations has 6 major bodies to carry out its activities. First and foremost, the General Assembly. The General Assembly is the main body of the United Nations. It is like a world parliament. Each member nation has one vote in the General Assembly, and its main functions are to admit new members, to appoint Secretary General of the United Nations on the recommendation of the Security Council, to elect 10 temporary members for the Security Council, to pass the annual budget, and to receive and discuss reports of main bodies of the United Nations. Now let's see the second body of the United Nations, that is the Security Council. The Security Council is the executive body of the United Nations. It is the most important organ of the United Nations. It consists of two types of members, that is permanent members and non-permanent members. Its total strength is 15, out of which 5 are permanent members. The permanent members are USA, UK, Russia, France, and China. The remaining 10 members are chosen from among the other nations by the United General Assembly for 2 years. The permanent members have the veto power. It means if out of these 5 any one member votes against the matter being discussed, the matter is not passed. It will have to be discussed and voted again later. Now let's see the main functions of the Security Council. The main functions of the Security Council are to stop all conflicts in the world, to have talks to maintain peace, and to send peacekeeping forces against a nation which becomes a threat to international peace. Now let's see another body, that is the Economic and Social Council. The council has 54 member countries elected by the General Assembly. The tenure of the member is 3 years. 1/3 of the member retire every year, and no retired member can be re-elected immediately. The Economic and Social Council meets twice a year in the month of April and July. Now let's see the main functions. What are the main functions of the Economic and Social Council? To collect data in respect of economic, social, educational, health, and other such related matters, and to submit report to the General Assembly, and to promote economic and social cooperation among the members of the nations of the United Nations. Next body is Trusteeship Council. The Trusteeship Council was set up in 1945 to help the nations ruled by colonial powers. There were 11 such nations, but now all of them are independent. So this body now of the United Nations is not functional. Now let's see another body of the United Nations, that is the International Court of Justice. It is the legal court of the United Nations. The court is permanently in session at the Hague, that is in Netherlands. The court consists of 15 judges who are elected by the Security Council and the General Assembly for a period of 9 years. But no two judges of the same nationality can be elected. The court also elects its president and vice president. Their term is of 3 years. The functions of the International Court of Justice are to settle legal disputes, and it acts when both the parties agree to go to it for a decision. And finally, let's see the last body of the United Nations, that is the Secretariat. It is one of the main bodies of the United Nations that handles all administrative work. It is headed by the Secretary General, and the other officials are a member of assistant secretaries and a large number of international officials. There are 6 official languages of the United Nations, and they are English, French, Russian, Spanish, Chinese, and Arabic. Apart from these bodies, United Nations has some important agencies. Let's see them quickly. The World Health Organization, WHO. The World Health Organization is responsible for providing leadership on global health matters, shaping the health research agenda, setting norms and standards, articulating evidence-based policy options, providing technical support to nations, and monitoring and assessing health trends. Second agency is the International Labour Organization, ILO. The International Labour Organization is devoted to advance opportunities for women and men to obtain decent and productive work in conditions of freedom, equity, security, and human dignity. And the third agency, the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, that is UNESCO. UNESCO has the task of ensuring the education and the sharing of knowledge to lead a universal respect amongst all people. And finally, the most important agencies of United Nations is the International Atomic Energy Authority, that is IAEA. The IAEA works with its member states and multiple partners worldwide to promote safe, secure and peaceful nuclear technologies. So that's all for today.